Today's Entre Nous is focusing on desserts. Now, we've already used this segment to profile pastry chefs who are making their mark in France. My guest today, however, is a French pâtissier making a splash overseas. Antonin Simon, welcome. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
So you grew up in a family of chefs and bakers in France, in the French
right.
countryside. Did you always know you wanted to be a pastry chef?
Yeah, I think it was at the age of 7 years old. I told my parents that I wanted to be a pastry chef because I was already making cakes with my grandmother. She told me like all the French classics, so I was pretty lucky to have that time with her.
And you studied art history before you went to chef school. I mean, what kind of influence did that background have on you as a chef today?
So many. I mean, I'm someone very creative since I'm a child. And so, yeah, I studied sculpture and engraving and painting. And today, for sure, building, when I'm making a cake, it's like an architecture in a sense, and kind of a sculpture. But when I think a new dessert, I always start with a sketch, and then there's the flavor comes to my mind, and yeah.
So tell me a bit about what cakes you brought in today.
Yes. So this one is the cheesecake that is one of the best seller in Hotel Esencia where I'm working. So it's more like an elevated cheesecake. So at the bottom you have like a sablé crust. Then you have a mango passion fruit marmalade with low sugar, sponge cake soaked in passion fruit.
I'm laughing at the low sugar. There's no way.
Yeah, low sugar. Then you have passion fruit, mango, mascarpone cheesecake, and then you have a lime cheesecake.
So what was the inspiration behind that?
So this one has a little story because the first time I went to Hotel Esencia for the first time, so it's a hotel in Mexico located in Yucatan. The owner and CEO of the hotel, Kevin Wendell, asked me as a test to make something for him. And he's American. He told me, it has been a long time that I didn't eat a good cheesecake. So wonderful. So I went to the kitchen and grabbed some fresh mangoes and passion fruit, and I made this. And he tasted it. He said, "Oh my God, this is so good. I want this on the menu, and you need to come back."
And it's funny because in France, cheesecake isn't really a thing.
Well, you know what? It changed because, yeah, you're right. Because for a long time, like chefs, they thought like everything coming from America was like, but now like people love it. I mean, the guests were looking for it, not only American, but European too. And now like cheesecake, you have it in all the most luxury places in Paris.
Yeah, it's incredible that the cuisine is crossing borders as well. Like you said, in 2023, one of the world's best hotels, the one in Mexico, Hotel Esencia, reached out to you. What were the biggest culture conflicts there when you were working in Mexico, from a cuisine standpoint, but also just culturally?
Well, there's not really conflicts, but it was certainly challenging because I used to speak Spanish, but not that well. But I would say, the most challenging thing was the weather. It's very hot. It's about 40 degrees Celsius, and you have humidity around like 80% of humidity in the air. So it's hard to work like that. Even if you have AC in the kitchen, it's still very hot.
And probably hard on certain pastries too, I'd imagine, because they collapse in humidity.
No, they don't collapse, but they melt. They melt. Like for example, have horchata profiterole. It's ice cream. But it's plated dessert. So when I have an order, I made it in 5 minutes and it goes straight to the table.
And just send it out. So before Mexico, well, first of all, you started your career in Paris. Then you went on a road trip to California. That was where your first overseas opportunity came about as a trainee. What was it like being a trainee at a bakery in the States, in San Francisco?
Oh, it was amazing. I had the chance to be trained by Belinda Leong. She's one of the best chefs in the US. And the culture in San Francisco is very unique because this bakery was a mix of American, French, and Asian. You have a huge Asian community, and so we were mixing like all those different influences. And Belinda, she's like someone very innovative, very creative. So I had the chance I learned a lot from her.
Do you find that your pastries or your style changes depending on where you are?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would say that in Esencia, I would say it's more minimalistic. Like this one is like very simple, and it depends of the chef I'm working with sometimes. Now it was my first project on my own as a chef for Esencia, so I also adapt myself to the style of the hotel.
What's been your biggest pastry mishap so far? I mean, I know we don't like to talk about our failures, but there must have been something that just went horrifically wrong.
That failed?
Yeah.
Where?
Or anywhere that collapsed.
Okay, so I have a good example for you. I think it's the croissant in Esencia. Because once again, like guests want croissant wherever you are in the world. So croissant, it was super hard to make it because when you're making the dough, you have fresh yeast in it. And the fresh yeast is activates around like 23 degree. So can you imagine
In
like
35,
yeah.
40.
So we had so many fails with those croissants. But we keep going and the team was so sweet.
And what was the trick? How did you fix it?
Work fast and use the freezer as much as we can.
So we were saying earlier, your grandmother on your mother's side was the one who really inspired you to do your cooking. But it was your grandmother on your father's side who actually gave you a little mini Statue of Liberty when you were little. Is that what sparked your interest in travel?
Yeah, I had the chance to have those two fascinating grandmother. And I think, the other grandmother from my father's side, she travels so much. And I had the chance to travel also a lot with my parents. And yeah, I think I mix both of them. Yeah.
And I can assume that you're not done dreaming big. You're still quite young, just in your early 30s. I mean, where do you see yourself going next? What would be the dream job after this?
You know what? It's hard to tell because, pastry is all about meeting the right people at the right moment. You never know. I had no idea that I will work in Mexico like 2 years ago. So I let, the flow and the life surprise me.
Anthony, just before you go, I mean, it's not
Yes.
always we have an incredible pastry chef on the set. Do you have any tips for those of us who might not be the best bakers out there?
What do you like?
Anything, cookies, cakes, just what's the trick? Is there one?
In which sense? Sorry.
Let's say you keep making cookies and they end up being flat.
Oh, yeah. Well, it depends. Sometimes it depends on the recipe. For example, cookies do not overmix the batter.
Okay.
Otherwise, they're going to be flat. And it depends. For example, cookies, we can talk about hours because there's some, they like it crispy, tender, moist on the center.
Basically a cake like in the United
Yeah,
States.
it's super. But I would say be patient and fail is the best lesson, and you do it again and have fun. Have fun.
How many of your pastries do you actually eat?
Not
Or
that
taste?
much. I try to.
I was going
I'm
to
a
say, you're
diet-
quite slim.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I love food. I really love food. When I tasted like half a teaspoon, so just a touch, just a little. But I prefer to eat others' cake than mine.
All right. Spoken like a true chef. Thank you, Antonin Simon,
Thank
for
you so
coming
much.
in and
Thank you
telling
for
us
having
all
me.
about being a French chef working around the world. And we can't wait to taste that cheesecake.
please.
We'll do that just after the break.